Right from the kickoff, the Philadelphia Eagles let the Green Bay Packers know that they were going to be in for a fight. The defense was physical from start to finish, and they set the tone for the day. But this defense's big day was more than just being physical. Good communication, formation recognition, and route recognition were crucial as well. We had some standout games from certain players, a lot of missed tackles, and a big injury that will shape the rest of the postseason and roster construction going into next year. First up, let's start with the physical play. Oren Burks definitely set the tone on the kickoff by leveling Keyshawn Nixon and making him rethink ever returning kicks again. But that continued as we saw Nolan Smith knock Elton Jenkins out of the game, taking on a kickout block, and later in the game, a big hit from Reed Blankenship ended Jaden Reed's day. Nobody likes to see players hurt, but that's a microcosm of a tough, physical defense that flies to the ball. But that physicality isn't just limited to big hits. We saw the defensive front win the battle on the line of scrimmage all game long, and we talked about how important that would be to win this game. Here we see a great example of that from Nolan Smith and Jalen Carter. Both of them do a great job playing with good pad level, holding their primary gap, then falling back into their secondary gap. Being able to play multiple gaps like this makes it damn near impossible to run the ball. It's quite impressive to see a play like this from Nolan Smith, who is one of the smaller edge defenders in the NFL, but it's his technique that allows him to get the most out of his body. We see him take a good lateral first step and striking with a good base, excellent pad level, and tight hands and elbows. He does a great job to shuffle down the line, compressing his gap, and that inside hand placement and pad level allows him to win the leverage battle, so that he's able to fall back into his secondary gap with the runner and end the play by himself. That's teach tape stuff. The Eagles played a lot of quarters in this game, and it was the defensive line's continual ability to hold their primary gap and work back to their secondary gap that allowed it to work. Later in the game, the Packers came out in 12 personnel, and the Eagles matched with nickel. They're playing with the light box, the Packers run right at them with duo, and they're still not able to make it work because Jalen Carter's ability to create knockback as a penetrating 3 technique ruined the play. We saw a similar play from Carter late in the fourth quarter. We see Carter again working to attack up the field as opposed to working laterally down the line like we saw in the earlier clips. He's technically responsible for the A-gap, but he's able to knock the guard into the backfield again and use the momentum of the combination block to push him back into the A-gap. When we pause and look at this run, the 4 defensive linemen that ended this play was a theme throughout the day. For the day, the Packers running backs ended with 87 yards on 21 carries. That 4.1 yards per carry average from their running backs was far below their 4.5 yards per carry average that their backs averaged this year, which was 9th best in the NFL for anyone counting. And considering 31 of those yards came on one play, they were extremely dominant on the ground, down in and down out. Now, the coverage on the back end was excellent as well. After a game where Kellen Moore, Jalen Hurts, and the Eagles passing offense are taking some heat, it's Jordan Love who threw 3 interceptions and 0 touchdowns, compared to 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions for Hurts. He also had 4 total turnover-worthy plays to Hurts' 0, and Love's 6.4 yards per attempt average was his 3rd worst of the season. And remember, Love had 0 turnover-worthy plays from week 13 on. The Eagles' defense was clearly frustrating Love, as they routinely did a good job passing off and leveraging routes and generally giving him little place to go with the ball. The completions he did have were often passes that had to be thrown with precise timing and accuracy, and often into crowded spaces. The defense played a ton of quarters and split field coverages in this game, and that was aided in large part to their defense stopping the run on early downs. Let's take a look at some specific plays. This play was by far my favorite from the defense because it shows how they've adjusted throughout the season. When we go back to the Ravens game, we saw a play where the Eagles matched the Ravens tight end trips formation with quarters, but they used one of their trips adjustments, often referred to as tricks. And the simplest way to explain tricks, the corner is going to match the number 1 receiver on any vertical route, the strong side safety is going to match the number 2 on any vertical route, and the weak safety is going to match the number 3 on anything vertical as well. This allows the defense to flood the front side of the formation with 5 defenders for 3 receivers, and it also alleviates the linebackers and nickel from having to carry any route vertical. The Ravens run a play to stress the rules of tricks. They send the number 1 and number 2 receivers on deep post routes that are really designed to be clear outs. They stem the number 3 receiver inside before breaking back outside, and they send the running back into the flat. The key here is the number 3 receiver running the corner route. Since in tricks, the weak safety is going to match number 3 vertical, they take advantage of his positioning on the other side of the field and run a route away from him, while occupying the strong safety with a deep post. In order to alleviate that stress, the safeties need to be able to read and switch off on those routes, but they're late switching off. And it would also help if the flat defender was able to sink underneath the corner route, but the running back releasing to the flat puts him in a no-win situation as well. Lamar Jackson ultimately ends up throwing an inaccurate pass, but you know other teams are going to see this on film and come back to it. And that's just what the Packers did. But the Eagles were ready for it. The safeties were much quicker to pass off the routes, but the key here isn't the safeties. Instead of having the flat defender be put in conflict, when they see the running back leak into the flat, making this a 4-strong look, they have the quarter hook defender match the running back to the flat, allowing the flat defender to sink underneath the corner, which gives the safety time to leverage this throw over the top. This is a hard play to switch off on for the safety, but the flat defender sinking underneath the throw will force the quarterback to put air on the pass and give the safety more time to get over top of the route. This is a great job from the defense, from the coaching staff to the players, of adjusting to a concept that gave them problems before. And it bodes well going into their rematch with the Rams, considering that they had some plays that they gave up, especially early in their Week 12 matchup. Formation and route recognition showed up on other plays as well. Here we see the Packers come out in empty and the Eagles are in quarters coverage. The Packers are running a bow concept on the weak side, a play that I highlighted in the preview show that I'd like the Eagles to run against the Packers, where the number 2 receiver runs a hitch route with the number 1 receiver running a dig behind him. And the Eagles actually ran a very similar concept against the Packers in the red zone. But the goal is to take advantage of the quarter hook defender having to honor the trip side, opening up space backside. Reed Blankenship knows this, so he's aware not to get too much depth in his back pedal, especially when he sees the number 2 receiver run the hitch. He plays a route with inside leverage, and he's waiting and ready to break on the throw. This play is even better because the coverage matches with the rush. Up front, we see Milton Williams win quick. Jordan Love could make this throw if he hung in there to take the hit, but you see him staring at Reed, knowing that he doesn't have the window that he needs. While he's able to avoid Milton Williams, Nolan Smith does an excellent job to not get too high in the rush and run past the quarterback. He realizes he's not going to win outside, so he compresses the pocket, and when Milton forces Love to scramble, Nolan is able to take away the rush lane. This play is a great example of the coverage forcing the quarterback to hold the ball, and the front rushing as a unit to force a scramble, and then taking away the rushing lane. The defense had other nuances in coverage that I liked as well. On obvious passing downs, you would see their edge defenders often reroute the number 3 receiver if they were lined up close to the line of scrimmage, whether it was a receiver or tight end. We see Baun bump Sweat out before the snap, and it's good that he did so because the Packers are trying to target Baun in coverage. They want to run Tucker Kraft up the seam to open up a window underneath, but because Sweat reroutes Kraft, it messes up the spacing and timing of the route concept, and now the picture is too muddied for Love's liking, and he panics. Part of me feels like this was an adjustment to the game-winning touchdown that Jaden Daniels threw against the Eagles in Week 16. The Commanders used a very similar concept against the Eagles while they were running the same coverage, though they used the stack formation and switch release, but getting the free release up the seam made the coverage much harder for Baun. I imagine they will continue to find ways to prevent free releases up the seam when in this coverage. And speaking of Baun, he continues to show his value for the team with yet another turnover. He intercepted a pass from Love by matching his receiving threat, getting his eyes back to the quarterback, and getting in the throwing window. Now, part of his interception was likely due to the fact that Tucker Kraft slipped on the route and didn't get to his landmark to pull Baun out of the window, and the other part is that Matt LaFleur said the backup receiver ran the route at 15 yards instead of 20. Now, maybe he's trying to cover for his quarterback, but looking back at a very similar concept against the 49ers, we see starting wide receiver Romeo Doubs run the same route to a depth of 20 yards. More depth would have allowed Love more space to fit this ball over Baun, but even then, Darius Slay had the wide receiver blanketed from the backside, and even if he did run the route another 5 yards deeper, CJ would have been in position to make a break on the pass as well. Now, the defense did miss a lot of tackles in this game, and that will need to get cleaned up. After missing a season-high 4 tackles last time out against the Cowboys, Zack Baun missed 4 tackles again in this game. Cooper DeJean, Reed Blankenship, and Oren Burks each missed 3 tackles of their own, and Jalen Carter and Moro Ojomo missed 2 tackles as well. I don't think it's a huge concern because it's pretty uncharacteristic of the defense, but Kyron Williams is 10th in missed tackles forced among running backs, and Puka Nacua is tied for 5th in missed tackles forced among wide receivers despite playing 11 games. Finally, we have to talk about Nakobe Dean going down. He will be missed, and there's no replacing what he brought to the team in terms of his physicality and football IQ. Hell, the play he got hurt on was him blowing up a screen to Tucker Kraft. Vic Fangio was a little coy about who he would be playing, though I know the Jeremiah Trotter truthers viewers are looking at his comments through an optimistic lens. It'll be interesting to see who plays. If you just look at the Twitter world, you would think this defense can't win with Burks, and that's partly due to the Jeremiah Trotter hype train, which was the same hype train that was criticizing Fangio for giving Baun first-team reps over Trotter during training camp and preseason, but that's also partly due to some bad plays by Burks in the game. But Nakobe got hurt in the middle of the second quarter, and the defense gave up just 10 points with Burks in the rest of the game. Truth be told, I think they can win with either linebacker. A large part of that is due to the front that protects the linebackers and a back seven that's done an awesome job communicating for most parts of the season. Burks made some good plays throughout the game in both run support and in coverage, and he's a veteran with size and speed and will play with physicality, though not to the same level of Nakobe Dean. But there were 3 notable plays that stood out. One of them was a big Josh Jacobs run. Looking at this play, if we go by the letter of the law, Burks is supposed to fit the run inside of the right shoulder of the guard. But playing linebacker is often about feel and understanding where the running back is likely to find space due to traffic around. If Burks had stayed a little bit more square to take on the block, he probably has a better chance to fall back into this play. Now, I don't think Reed should be off the hook for missing a tackle or DeJean for going up high and getting tossed to the ground, but Burks could have done better on this play. From the limited reps we've seen of Trotter in the NFL, I think he has a good feel for knowing where the ball is going to hit. If you write down the run fits on paper, Trotter should be fitting in the B gap, but he understands with the slant of the defensive line, the run is probably going to be cut off to the front side and hit backside. So Trotter does a good job not getting caught in the traffic and falling back with the running back. Back to Burks, there was also this Texas route he lost on, though it was a tough play knowing the Packers were intentionally trying to pick him, but he was too focused trying to get over top of the pick that he didn't maintain good leverage on the back. And there was a missed tackle in coverage that led to a big gain. Does Trotter make all these plays? Maybe, maybe not. We really haven't seen that much of him, and there's likely a reason Fangio has opted for Burks as the first linebacker off the bench every step of the way, but I thought Trotter put a lot of good reps on tape in his first game against the Giants, and I think he will step up if asked to be the starter with Dean out for the rest of the year. Now, we're going to touch back on this game again when going through the preview for the Rams game, but that'll be it for today's episode. Let me know in the comments, what do you think is going to be the biggest matchup to pay attention to against the Rams?